Welcome back to the Arctic Beyond. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has a significant sequence set in Alaska. It's set on St. Matthews Island, which is supposedly the most remote place in the whole of the US. As you can imagine, me and my bordering on unhealthy obsession with all things Arctic and my love of film, I was pretty excited about this. But when I was watching The Final Reckoning, something just felt off. I know, I don't mean because the film spends an hour giving you flashbacks to previous better films, then flashbacks to those flashbacks, then flashbacks to those flashbacks of flashbacks, like all the crew was actually in Memento. It just looked wrong. It turns out all those Alaska sequences weren't actually filmed there. They were filmed thousands of kilometres away in Svalbard, the islands off the north coast of Norway.
What an absolutely remarkable place to be able to film.
So with the Arctic playing a big role in what's due to be one of the year's biggest blockbusters, I worry that there's going to be a lot of misconceptions and a lot of incorrect facts flying around from the film. So I had an idea. Let's do a fact check. Let's do an Arctic fact check for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning.
That's a fact check.
Minor spoiler alert, I'm not going to go into the plot of the film and the reasons why characters are doing what they're doing, why they're in the places that they are. I'm just going to talk about some events that happen in the Arctic, so if you've not seen the film, you shouldn't come away really with much spoiled, nothing important anyway. But if you do want to see the film and have no information about it, I don't know why you clicked on this video in the first place, go watch the film, come back to this, and we'll all have a great time. Okay? I do think that this could be a regular segment on the channel for films which aren't Arctic films. You know, I have my review series of films which are definitively this is an Arctic film, but there's quite a few films that just have things happen in the Arctic, a sequence.
Take me all the way to the North Pole!
And I think it could be fun for these big blockbuster type films to fact check what they are talking about, how much did they get wrong, and really see are the popular representations of the Arctic in film even slightly correct. So in the comments, please do let me know if you think this is a good idea, if you've enjoyed this film, there's things I can do better, if there's any other films you can think of which you think would really benefit from a good old Arctic fact check. I'd love to know, and yeah, hopefully this can become a regular segment on the channel. Alright, let's get into it. First, let's talk location. St. Matthews Island is about 300 kilometres away from anything else sitting alone in the Bering Sea, so very remote. But where the filming actually took place, Svalbard, that's honestly pretty close to the North Pole, rather than pretty close to Russia. And in doing the research for this piece, I found out some real crazy stuff about this island. It's got a weird history, and I think I'm going to make a follow-up video all about the history of St. Matthews Island, so keep an eye out for that. So our first glimpse of the Arctic comes about an hour into the film. And what do we see first? We see thick sea ice and Inuit fishermen. Those are our first two fact checks. Sea ice, Inuits. Later on, we're going to learn that the submarine, which this whole sequence is based around, sinks at these coordinates. Now that's actually deep into the Pacific Ocean at this point. It's another 300 kilometres away from St. Matthews Island. Later, Tom Cruise is going to find the sub, come up to the surface, and basically be on the shore of the island. So I need to actually ask this to Mr. McQuarrie, our beloved director. Are you saying that Tom either swam 300 kilometres to get to the island, or that when he was in the submarine, it suddenly drove 300 kilometres to the island? I'd just like to know. For the sake of the movie, we have to assume it takes place in winter. I don't know, I don't remember if it says at any point when it's set, but for it to make any sense, it has to take place in winter, so benefit of the doubt takes place in winter. And that's because in the summertime, the island would actually look like this, but in the film, we see it looks like this. So, okay, fair enough, Mr. Cruise, we're gonna say it's winter. How is the ice situation in St. Matthews Island in winter in a normal year? Well, at first glance, we take a look at the projections of sea ice in winter around St. Matthews Island, and it looks okay, right? There's sea ice, it's just right on the edge there, it's right on the edge, but okay, we can say there's sea ice there. You got that right? Checkmate climate change, you just got cruised!
Take that player.
Except, if we look at this other map of the thickness and the concentration of the sea ice, we can see that around St. Matthew's Island it's only about 20% as thick as it should be. Just like me. So the ice, okay, the ice could freeze over the top of the bodies that are floating in the water. Fine, it just freezes over them. And maybe we can say there's a spot thick enough on the ice for some Inuit fishermen to stand on it and break through it without falling through. Maybe they got lucky. But later on, what we see a dog sled full of people and really heavy equipment barreling on top of this sea ice. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, no. No. There is no universe in which sea ice 20% as thick as it should be could ever support the weight we are shown it carrying. And in fact, according to some climate researchers who've spent some time there, the ice is thin, it's jumbled up, and it's a far cry from the smooth white scenery that was shown in the movie. Fact check 1. Sea ice. Verdict, mostly incorrect. You just got fact checked. Fact check number 2, the Inuit fishermen. Why did you want to ask about the Inuit fishermen? We're getting contentious now. We're getting into racial groups. Great. Fantastic. Already, we're 10 minutes into this video and I'm already getting cancelled. Great. Fine. Well, fine. We're gonna get into this. So the submarine sank about 400 kilometers away from its nearest populated landmass. That's St. Paul's Island, which is home to about 400 people from the Aleut Nation, which is not Inuit. I'm gonna hope that they didn't just go, whatever. All the people that live around there, they're all just Inuits, right? Let's just call them Inuits. Let's ignore that, okay? Where's the nearest Inuit community? Alright, okay. The nearest Inuit community is Nunavak Island, which is about 550 kilometers away. And that's home to about 200 people of the Yupik Nation. Now, why would the people from that island be fishing 550 kilometers away? That's about 240 nautical miles. Let's assume they've got a decent standard outboard motor on their traditional fishing boat. Okay, that can go at a rate of about 20 knots. And that's about 12 hours each way to get to that spot. So, would the fishermen be doing a 24-hour round trip to go to a random spot in the middle of the ocean to do some fishing? I consider that no way that there are actually going to be Inuit fishermen in that area at that time to find the submarine. Fact check number 2, Inuit fishermen. Verdict, all incorrect. You just got fact checked. Moving on from that scene, we go to fact check number 3, the military facility on St. Matthew's Island. The mission team arrives to the island to find the military facility to do what they need to do for the film. Now this, I'll admit, this is one that is harder to fact check because for it to make any sense at all, we have to basically assume we're living in a different reality to the one we're living in. I mean, can you imagine if Tom Cruise actually existed? I mean, that would be just crazy, right? I mean, he's just that story that we tell kids about the dangers of getting into jogging and getting into sci-fi novels a bit too much.
I'm going to make you as happy as a baby cyclo on a straight diet of Prebango.
Now, the reason that we need to talk about this alternate reality is because the military facility on that island just existed for a few years during World War II. After World War II, it was abandoned and just left to rot. So compare with what we do see in the movie. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's nice. That's a nice little cabin. Oh, I'd rent that for a week away, sure. How lovely. I wonder what it actually looks like there now. Oh. The toilet's in surprisingly good condition. Put some potpourri and a salt lamp around there and you could take a pretty pleasant dump. Fact check number 3. Military facility. Verdict, all incorrect. You just got fact checked. Fact check number 4, Tapisa. When we get to the cabin, the first person we meet is Tapisa, the Inuit wife of the American guy who lives there. Tapisa is played by Lucy Tulugajuk. She's a brilliant Inuit actress from Nunavut in Canada. I really encourage you to check out her other films, and especially Atanajuat the Fast Runner, which is a sensational, groundbreaking Inuit film from 2001. Now, I'm so happy that they cast an Inuit actress for this role, and especially they let her speak her native language. She doesn't actually say a single word in English throughout the film. However, I'm so sorry to fact check you, Tapisa. I kind of hate myself for this. You speak in Inuktitut. In Western Alaska, they speak Inupiaq. Oh no, Tapisa, why? No! maybe she's from Nunavut and she moved to St. Matthew's Island to live on this military base with this guy. I don't see why that would happen, but maybe it happened. I reckon they just cast this actress and just said, well, speak your native language. Which is fine, but there is a character in the film called Paris. Do you think there is any universe in which Paris would be speaking Spanish? That's all I have to say about that. Okay? All I have to say.
If I speak, I am in big trouble.
Right now, I'm just happy that they tried it all in terms of native representation. Fact check number 4. Tapisa. Half correct?
Yeah.
Hey! Alright, half correct. Cool. We'll take it. Half a point on the board, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. And you just got fact checked. Fact check number 5. Husky sledding. So 2 characters go to feed the huskies. On the real St. Matthew's Island, the messy nature of the sea ice and the fact that it's not very big and all the travel's done by boat means that I don't expect that dog sleds have ever been such a thing on the island. Since this environment was actually filmed in remote Svalbard, and since that dog sledding teams are such an integral part of remote Arctic life, I'm gonna say that's okay. Not 100% correct, but in this general representation of Arctic life, I'm gonna say they can take this one. Fact check number 5. Husky sledding. Verdict? Acceptable. You just got fact checked. Well done. Look at you, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. You got acceptable. Fact check number 6. Polar bears.
Those polar bears over in the corner. That's Aryan Vanguard, the aviars.
The 2 characters on the dog sled, they take it out across a beautiful landscape that looks like this, instead of what St. Matthew's coastline actually looks like, which is more like this. As you can see, St. Matthew's Island, it has a snowy coastline, a bit icy, sure, but it's far from the vast expanse of sea ice that we see in the film. Tapisa gives the team member with her some supplies, including a rifle, and warns her to watch out for Nannok, which is the Inuit term for polar bear. Honestly, this could have been the actress Lucy breaking character, because when they were filming in Svalbard, they did have polar bear encounters, which is amazing and crazy. And so Tom Cruise, right? I'm gonna risk my life every 30 minutes, but all you are gonna risk being eaten by polar bears for this film. If you are outside Longyearbyen, which is the main settlement of Svalbard, either you or someone in your team does have to carry a rifle. I did rifle training when I was there because you need to learn, unfortunately, how to kill a polar bear. And that's all just in case you learn that humans aren't quite the apex predators you think. I'm so sorry, Mr. Rogan. Do you think 100 polar bears could beat one Joe Rogan? I'll rephrase that. Do you think that 100 polar bears could survive the fatal dose of steroids and Dr. Oz supplements after they have eaten Joe Rogan? Comment down below. Is there a real threat of polar bears on St. Matthew's Island for Tapisa to worry about? No, we killed them all. When I was doing my research for this piece and I learned about the history of what humans have done on this island, I had to take a break and watch a few episodes of The Simpsons, and I was still very upset afterwards. It is very upsetting what we have done on this island, and the answer is there are no more polar bears left.
Because we kill everything we see.
Does it still somehow get polar bears coming over there? Occasionally, there is a polar bear floating over on a piece of ice on an iceberg, floating over to St. Matthew's Island. Now, I wasn't actually able to find any concrete data whatsoever about how often this happens. I've just heard a bunch of scientists anecdotally saying, yeah, you get the occasional one. But I've no idea how many and how often this is. If we take a similar example, and that's Iceland. Iceland has a polar bear washing up every couple of years. People in Iceland don't need to carry around guns all the time because of the very remote chance a polar bear will wash up on there. So it does bring into question the need to carry a rifle on the island. Since there isn't the data to disprove this, my gut tells me carrying a rifle on St. Matthew's Island isn't necessary for polar bears. We've seen there are angry Russians on there. Very necessary for angry Russians.
As far as the Russians are concerned, we just bombed the Kremlin.
You're probably more likely on this American remote island to encounter the Coca-Cola polar bear rather than a real one. And believe me, you do not want to owe that bear money. You learn the hard way. The secret ingredient in Coke is pain. Fact check number 6. Polar bears. Verdict. Inconclusive. You win this round, Tom.
You just got kinda fact-checked.
And the final fact check is number 7. Tom Cruise's survival? Tom gets out of the submarine, swims to the surface, where he seems to either die or come very, very close to it. The sea around St. Matthew's Island is especially cold. I was really shocked about this. I was looking at ocean temperature maps. St. Matthew's Island is a real a vortex of cold, much colder than the area around it, reaching about 0 to -2 degrees in the ocean. We have to assume that he drifted close to the island. If we look at a sea depth map, we can see that the seafloor seems to be on average about 50 meters deep. In water that cold, the body will immediately go into a high intensity cold water shock. Basically, you lose control of your breathing, you start losing motor functions, your body cannot survive in this water. The only way to retain body heat, in fact, right, okay, survival lesson everybody, I gotta show you, if you ever find yourself in the Arctic Ocean, this is the way you survive. This is how you survive, okay? Fetal position. Protect your internal organs, okay? You find yourself in the ocean, you sit like this, and because, I mean, obviously, unless there is a piece of land right nearby you can swim to, we're talking about if you're just in the middle of the ocean, you just have to sit like that and wait for help and hope. If you start swimming, your body loses temperature at an insane degree. You just start dying very, very quickly. The only way to survive longer than, 10 minutes is to go fetal position and wait and hope. In comparison, this is what Tom Cruise does. Now, who do you think will retain the body heat the longest? We see him swim from 50 meters down to the surface, and we see him get the bends on the way up. So he has nitrogen bubbles in the blood, which is causing excruciating pain and making it even harder for him to control his breathing, to control his motor functions, to think, to feel anything, and frankly, to stay alive. At this point, even if he was in a warm bath in Tahiti, he would have a very slim chance of survival. Never mind that he is in the equivalent of a snowman's mini fridge. He has got hypothermia, he's in shock, he's got the bends, he gets to the surface and is met with a thick old layer of sea ice. Okay, at this point, he happens to float up to the exact place where Hayley Atwell, the member of his team, is there, and she, breaks through the ice, gets him out. That's just movie logic, fine, we'll accept it. But at this point, I'm sorry, Hayley Atwell is retrieving a corpse from the sea. I'm talking a 0% chance of him surviving this. But you know what's even more ridiculous? Do you know what saves Ethan Hunt? Do you know what rescues the world from the entity, the AI, the bad guy, the evil thing? Do you know what saves the world? Hayley Atwell's boobs. Her boobs float into screen. That's the first thing we see of her. And then she spoons him back to life. She drags him out onto shore, sets up some kind of tent, and literally spoons him back to life. There's this slow motion montage, like the end of Lord of the Rings, spoons him back to life over the course of about 30 seconds. I'm no doctor, but I can say with near complete certainty, Tom Cruise would not survive this. Fact check number 7, Tom's survival. Verdict, all incorrect.
You did not fact check.
Final scorecard for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. So here's our scorecard. We have sea ice, no. Inuit fishermen, no. Buildings on the island, no. Tapisa, half a point. Husky sledding, okay, we'll give it. Polar bears, inconclusive. Survival, no. So in total, that's an accuracy score 1.5 out of 7. We'll call it 1.5 out of 6. Because of the polar bear one, that's a score of 25%. Coincidentally, that's the same score as Ethan Hunt got in his last driving test. I really appreciate the film taking this time to really put real effort into filming the Arctic. I'm so happy with it. Even though I've rated it a score of 25%, I'm really happy with what they did. They could have honestly just filmed this in Alberta in Canada. That's what most places do. They just film in somewhere slightly snowy in Canada and call it the Arctic, so I'm so happy that they went further north than they should have done. St. Matthew's Island's only about 58 degrees north, and they went up to nearly 80 degrees north. That's why I like Tom Cruise as a filmmaker so much. He really cares about the craft and putting the effort in. His enthusiasm is so infectious, and while I didn't love The Final Reckoning as a film, I do really appreciate what he did here. None of the inaccuracies really bothered me that much. I mean, as I say, I felt a bit off when I was watching it, but I was more happy than anything. As I said, I'm going to follow up this video with a breakdown of the crazy history of St. Matthew's Island. If you thought this was interesting, as I said, I do hope to make this a more ongoing series about blockbusters which dare to film in the Arctic. I think it's the 8th Fast and Furious film, has a fair bit of ice action, so maybe that can be next on the list. But, you know, let me know. Let me know down below what you think I should do next. What film deserves an Arctic fact check? And as always, your likes, comments and subscribes really help out the channel, really help me in my ultimate goal of being an Arctic educator. So thank you very much for spending some of your time with me today. Stay safe, stay warm, see you next time. Bye bye.